One of my favorite people. It's Aaron Leigh. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, man. How are you? Good morning. Well, I don't know
Good.
where you're at. For me, it's morning. So,
Yeah, I'm at Kansas City here in the Midwest, so just hitting the afternoon. You a couple hours behind. You'll get there.
yeah, yeah. It's an early one for me, man.
I love I love your setup there. It's like I half expect like some woman to come out from behind you with like a I don't know some kind of like Arabian looking get up and I don't know like a lot could
Start
go
belly
on there.
dancing.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. The belly dancers are on the way. They'll be here in a couple hours.
Well, I think that maybe this imagery inspired your latest single, Bahia Sunshine.
Um, well, I mean, I like the boho look, and actually, my wife is the one who did this look in this room. She had a huge hand in decorating in here, except for these lamps here. I put these two lamps right here.
Dude, it looks
So
looks awesome. I can't wait to talk about the single, but Aaron, the last time we had you on, I don't know if you remember, was actually nothing to do with Y&T, Aaron Leigh music. It was a album battle, Wasp, the debut versus The Last Command, and that was one of the
yeah,
biggest
that's
shows we
right.
did all year.
Yeah, yeah, that was a lot of fun, man. I'd like to do that again sometime.
We will, and it's funny because since then, Wasp has toured, and I saw Wasp with Armored Saint last November. So the
And
world,
I had tickets to go see Wasp in Reno on that tour, and Y&T ended up booking a show that same night. So of course I had to go to
wow,
work.
that
And
is
then they
unbelievable.
canceled. And then Wasp canceled. So, it all worked out.
Wasp always cancels. This summer was supposed to be another run, but it's funny because they did that run with the Armored Saint, which was awesome. The show I saw actually, Michael Schenker played too. But to think back to 1986, where that same thing happened, Wasp, Armored Saint, and then another band was there that wound up really falling off the earth, doing nothing. They were called Metallica, and they weren't able to reprise their role as the opening band on this this tour. So because they fell off the earth. So sorry,
Yeah, I
Metallica.
think I heard of them. I heard of them. I think I've heard that name before. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very obscure. Them and Anvil sort of like coexist as in history as just sort of bands that never made it. But for you, Aaron, big times are ahead. Bahia Sunshine, the single, it's out, and it is so Aaron Leigh. It like fits perfectly with sort of a lot of your influences. It's a song that really it's like perfect. Came out in the summertime. It's got a lot of vibes to it. It's a very mystical song. It means a lot. It can mean anything to a lot of people, a lot of symbolism. So I ask you first, what does Bahia Sunshine mean to you?
Well, without going way deep into the ocean of deepness there, but so the name Bahia just comes from a girl that I knew when I was a little kid. Her name was Bahia, and I
Oh,
just carried the name around, in my mind for many years, and just thought it was unique sounding, pretty, and so I used it in the title, and I later now after I've written the song and put it out, I'm starting to discover that Bahia means a lot of things, and there's a lot of history with the name. First off, there's a state in Brazil called Bahia. And so I'm aiming towards having a huge hit in Bahia, Brazil. So, but and also there's such a thing called the Bahia faith, which is a religion, which I did not know. So there's these. Oh, and Bahia in Spanish means bay, so I didn't know that either. So there's all these things that when you write a song, you usually don't sometimes really understand what you wrote until there's some time has passed, and you rediscover your own music sometimes. I've done that with previous songs I put out, and so the lyrics are already kind of hit me in a different way than the way I even intended them in the first place. So it's interesting, man. It's been a learning experience, this track, for sure.
that's what's great about the song, and it's funny that you say that it was a girl's name because as I was listening to it, I was like, this could be about a girl, a spiritual enlightening, a religion, a town, a place. So that's kind of ironic that it was named after a girl because it's almost like that sort of as a underlying backdrop to me is that like, oh, this could be like a relationship. It could be so many different things to so many different people. And I love that about music. So you sort of like, gone down this road of, and I think that it fits you and kind of your influences perfectly. Just talk about kind of some of the bands that I feel like maybe influenced this song. I think, maybe like even like the Beatles, T-Rex. There's a lot of different things going on here. So what would you say influenced you in this music?
Well, definitely those two, T-Rex, David Bowie, for example. As I was creating some of the synth parts and thinking, like what would Bowie do here? Or, like it just things like that. I mean, I wasn't trying to be so just stealing, licks from people, but
Sure.
just a little of a feel that I was getting from the instrumentation as I was going along with the production. Because honestly, this song, when I first started writing it, it was on an acoustic guitar, and it had a very folky sound to it, bluesy folky vibe. And then once you start getting into the arrangement and the production of a song, it can take a whole different turn, go down a different road. And that's what happened with this. Is once the all the instruments were being added, and I was hearing it back, and I was like, all right, well, now it's going somewhere, when before I wasn't totally convinced of even tackling the song and taking it as far as I did. So yeah.
The lyric video, tremendous. Again, very immersive. How did you kind of come up with the concept of this? Did you work with somebody on that? And just talk about some of the musicians that you worked with and that helped you kind of arrange this piece.
So with the video, I think it's fun. I think it's a fun watch for a lyric video of if you can have fun with a lyric video. But again, with this track, and I'm sure this happens with a lot of musicians, especially when you do things by yourself, solo, is you find that you start to get on a learning curve with things because you need something done. And when it comes to the musicians on the track, you're looking at it. I played everything. I basically from the ground up and produced it. So and along with all the other solo tracks that I've done in the past, the only other musician that's played on my stuff is Frank Hannon from Tesla.
Yeah, incredible. And you've done some acoustic shows, and you have some coming up. So, like, talk about what those shows are like, what people can expect when they come see you doing your acoustic stuff, and just like, what's the feeling of that? Just being able to kind of strip everything down, just doing acoustic stuff. Like you said, you kind of wrote a Bahia Sunshine that way, and kind of that element always is a perfect way to strip down any kind of song and just go from its bare bones and play. And so, what are those shows, and how have they been like for you?
Well, I've been doing the solo acoustic thing for many years.
Yeah.
Since 2012, I've been doing that. I had a duo prior, and that went on for a few years, and then I just decided just to start just doing it by myself. Um, it's mainly all covers, but it's covers of Bowie, T-Rex. I do some Beatles. I do all my influences is what I'm doing, and I'm starting to sprinkle in some of my original music as well. Um, Actually, November 17th, Y&T is doing a show in Petaluma, California at the Mystic Theater. And I will be opening that
Yes.
show doing my acoustic solo stuff. And I'm going to do all originals. Last time I opened the show as well at the same place last year. And I did a lot of covers, and I did one original. My thought process was most people don't want to hear people's original music in that environment. They want to hear stuff that they've heard before and that they're familiar with. So I'm starting to discover that people do want to hear the originals. So I'm starting to sprinkle those in and take them as far as I can, when it's just me by myself. But I'll have another guy with me at the Y&T gig where I do the opening slot there. So it'll fill up the sound a little more, get a little more of the bells and whistles of the songs, and it'll be great.
Yeah, I think that too, that people are definitely going to be more receptive to that whenever you obviously are the bass player in Y&T, and that you have a visibility. People know you from your solo stuff and are starting to become, more out there in the mainstream. So I think people would definitely want to hear the original song. So that's going to be amazing. And pulling double duty, akin to Zach Wilde, Black Label Society to Ozzy, Nikki Sixx, 6 a.m. to Motley Crue. I mean, you're falling right in line with this great concept. And I don't know if there's others that have done stuff like this. I think it's awesome when bands do it, especially if it's, kind of one I'm not quite sure, like the band. I'm like, oh my God, that was the guitarist that. So I think it's cool. I don't know if you've seen a lot of other bands do this, but this is it's a cool deal that you do it.
Yeah, well, thanks to my manager, Jill. So she's the one who came up with the idea to do it. So, usually those shows we have, like we've had Richie Kotzen opened a show once. Eric Martin from Mr. Big opened a show once for us there. It's an annual thing that Y&T does there at the Mystic Theater. We do it every year in November. So yeah, it's going to be a great show.
And what else do you feel like is on the horizon for Y&T? I know you got some shows planned for like January, and then the Monsters of Rock cruise, which is always, a wonderful gathering of rockers, and I can't wait to be a part of that. So what else can people expect from Y&T on into 2024 here?
So 2024 is the 50th anniversary of Y&T as a band. It's hard to believe that it's been 50 years. I've been a fan of that band since I was 15 years old. So it's a trip, man. And so we've got, Japan in January. We're doing Tokyo, a couple shows in Tokyo.
Yep.
Then, like you mentioned, the Monsters of Rock cruise, we're doing that along with all the regional things that we do. Here in California and a little outside of California. I'm not sure about us doing the US in 24. I'm kind of unclear on that, but we are doing the UK and Europe as well, which we have done in the past yearly. It's an annual thing as well. So those are the plans so far.
The crazy thing is, Aaron, is let's see, this would have been like March. Oh my gosh, I want to say like 9th or 10th of 2020. Y&T in Kansas City at the Harris Casino. That was the last show that I saw for a year. That was it. It was like, it stands out in my mind so vividly. Y&T, and 2 days later, I was supposed to see Kiss in Tulsa. I was on my way to the show, and it was just like a Stephen King moment. Everybody go home. All the college basketball tournaments are canceled, tours canceled, everybody gone, and it was just like this moment. And I'll never forget that Y&T show, and I always would like think back to it. Like, remember that day we just went and saw Y&T, how awesome that was, and just a second, and then it was over for so long. What was that time period like for you personally?
Well, that show that you mentioned, I think that was our last show of that
Yeah,
US tour. And
it
that was the
was.
last time we toured the US.
Wow.
We got sent home early. I think we lost 3 shows. So we got lucky, man. We really did. We've almost finished out the whole tour.
Yeah.
Not seeing what was coming, but what came along, hey, it's what it is, man. And I think, people tried to make the best of what was happening, through the live streaming thing, watching your favorite bands, your favorite entertainers through a camera, which I did a lot of that during that time. But it also at that time allowed me to jump in and just start writing my
Yeah.
own music. I've written my own music my whole life, but it's always been with other bands, So this 2020 releasing Insanity, my first single, that was the kickoff to where we are right now. So yeah.
Do you want to do like an EP or a full album? Like, what do you think that this is kind of building up to in your mind?
Well, I already did release a 4-song EP back in 21, I think it was. And I am going to put out another EP at the end of the year, maybe, beginning early next year, of 6 songs that will be on this next EP, which will include Bahia Sunshine, along with 3 other new tracks that are already done. They're recorded, they're finished. And then I'm going to add a couple previous singles that I'd put out that I would want to include on the physical product on the CD, so I can sell that from AaronLeigh.com and at shows, things like that. So
When it comes to influences for you, Aaron, it's so vast, and you can hear it come out, especially in your solo material. I think that's tremendous because like you're a big Kiss guy. You obviously the Beatles and everything in between. So when you are, recording, whenever you're writing, do you have moments where it's like, oh, yeah, I can see maybe like, oh, I can, maybe like that little moment and like in that Beatles song, or like the like, oh, this is kind of more of the hard rock side of me coming out in this. Like, how do you in your mind sort of display all of this as you're writing your own stuff, and because your influences are just so wide and so vast?
I just let the song guide me, man. I mean, it kind of when you write it and then you're recording it, it's two different things, because then you start getting into the production elements of things after the song's been written. Some people write as they're recording, they change things around and go in a whole different direction. But it's not like I was thinking I'm going to write a song that sounds like the Beatles or T-Rex. It was just more or less like, I mean, even in the bass line of Bahia Sunshine, if you listen to the bass line, I was really influenced by John Taylor from Duran Duran. When I first started picking up a bass, he was one of my main influences. And so as I was creating that bass line for Bahia Sunshine, I had him in mind. Like, what would John Taylor do right here? What would he play? Along with like a Paul McCartney or something. When it comes to the bass. So, for example, that's about like as far as I would go with, let's say, an installed influence or something. But beyond that, as a whole, I just let the song kind of guide itself where it wants to go, and I'll just follow along and see where it ends up.
The bass is such an intricate instrument, and it's something that, just like me as a casual fan, not a player, that it took me a long time to really realize what the instrument was doing. And I think that it's weird because we had one croupier from Rad on about a month ago, and I kind of went back to some of his playing on I don't know, songs like Love and Use a Dirty Job and
Oh
Lay
yeah.
It Down, and some of that. I was like, you know what? Like, I think that subconsciously I started realizing what the bass was doing on some of Juan Crouchier's stuff. So just kind of talk about the bass in general, where you think that the instrument has evolved to, and maybe where you had a moment or looked back onto something where it was like, man, like I get it, like the bass, I understand it now. I know what it does, and like I want to do that because you're originally a drummer.
Yeah, my first instrument was drums, and I think that played a huge part in me wanting to play bass.
Yeah.
Hey, going back to, everyone's childhood as a musician, you've got buddies that you hang around with that are players too. Let's say, you both play guitar, and then you got another buddy that plays some drums or what. And then you're the guy that plays the guitar and the drums, and you say, well, hey, let's make a band. Well, I'll play bass then. You play guitar because you're better than me. You play drums because you're better than me. And I will play bass. That's how that started for me. Even picking up a bass, was kind of just this default position of, well, if we want to make a band, someone's got to play bass. Um, but I've mentioned this many times. It's like after I started listening to Iron Maiden as a teenager, and
Mm.
Steve Harris and Geddy Lee of Rush, and and even Juan, from Rat. I mean, all these bass players at that time period of the 80s, all the 80s, man. I mean, there were such great players, man, on the instrument bass. And so I had a lot of you know ways to get infiltrated, and inspired. So that's kind of where that came from. But I do believe just knowing how to play some drums, that it's a symbiotic relationship when it comes to the
Sure.
rhythm section. So I understand it. I'm in both sides of it. So I think it helps a lot, especially when playing with different drummers. From, let's say, when I got MY&T playing with Mike Vanderheel, he's just got a, to me, an unorthodox way of playing, and as a bass player, it was a little it caught me off guard that, okay, he's using 2 feet on his single kick. He's got a double pedal, right? I know I'm getting intricate here, and
No,
and
yeah,
and
I love it.
but but sometimes he'll play with his left foot, and then all of a sudden he'll switch to his right. And this isn't going back and forth like this, like most double bass drummers. He'll play on one song with his left foot, and I don't know why he does that, but it's just so that in general, because I would look over, and a lot of times I'll watch a kick drum head move or something just to make sure I'm locked down, or I'll watch his foot. I learned that from John Paul Jones when I was a kid, how he used to watch Bonham. Man, he'd watch him like a hawk. So I take those cues from a drummer, but being a drummer as well, that I know where he's coming from, so I'm understanding the concept. So yeah, it gets interesting, man, and it does get deep, you know.
Do you are you kind of seem like more of a kind of an in the moment introspective kind of guy, or do you ever look kind of on into the future, on into a world where beyond Y&T? Whereas, I mean, I just look around and I just wonder sometimes where all my heroes went. What happened? How did we get to 2023 and Aerosmith's on a farewell tour? Kiss is wrapping up, and on and on. I went to Twisted Sister's last show in 2016. So many. I just saw Motley Crue recently. They are back, but you never know. So, like, do you kind of look around at some of your peers and just a lot of which are your heroes? They're my heroes, and then also with Y&T to like, man, is there an end game here? And have you looked to that?
Yeah, it's interesting when you think about where the time went, and hey, all things can't last forever, you
Right.
know, and we know that. I mean, and you got to be aware of that and accept it, embrace it, really.
Yeah.
Getting older and things in the music business, again, I come back to, you got to do it because you love it. It's not a money driven thing. It's not an ego driven thing. It's a drive that's instilled in me from a child. So I feel like I'd be offending my own spiritual self if I didn't do what I'm doing. What's interesting, and I mean, just touching real quick about our heroes are
Yeah.
passing or they're retiring. It's just a sign that of where we are in our life.
Mm.
And what's beautiful about it is that we got to live in a time when the best music was created, in my opinion. So when you've got an Aerosmith that's out on their farewell tour, which I don't believe any of this farewell
Well, there
nonsense.
there is that. That's a whole nother. Yeah.
Yeah, that's silly. As long as the money train is still rolling along, man, I don't see that train stopping.
I
But
agree.
it does mark a point in your life, so it's just really interesting. What's again, and I know I'm chatting it up today.
No, no.
um I recently went down the rabbit hole with a band called X Japan,
Yes.
and
Oh my God.
and and Yoshiki in general, the drummer. um I am shocked and fascinated by this man. That first off, he's kind of androgynous looking. He reminds me of
Yeah.
kind of like a Bowie, but I didn't realize this guy's 57 years old, and he's got a brand new band out that he's pushing with these other guys that are all about the same age, are all in their 50s. And I just saw a video. I think they're called The Last Rock Stars. Not really my cup of tea of music, but I have mad respect for these guys that are out there because they're drawing crowds. First of all, I guess they just played in Hollywood recently. And what I noticed is all the screaming girls. It sounded like the Beatles in 1967 or something. And these guys are in their 50s, man. So it's interesting, man. It's an interesting time in music. I think that there's an audience for everything. And if you have quality, integrity, and are authentic to yourself, you'll find your audience. And I think that's what's happening with these guys, even though they've had previous careers in other bands and things like that. I mean, but going back to, the age thing, it's like, what is too old now? I don't know. I don't think there is a too old, as long as you're creating quality stuff.
Yeah. It's crazy because I was in high school when I saw Kiss on their farewell tour in 2000. And I remember it was like Gene Simmons' birthday was like the next day, or they like hit him with a cake on stage. It was like, I think he turned like 53, and I was like, 53. I was like, okay, this is it. There is no going past this. Gene, 53 years old. Like, that's it. There's no way. 23 years later.
Yeah.
And it's just like, of course, I mean, and so, yeah, for me, I think we all had that growing up. It's like our parents are 40, stick a fork in my dad. He's 40 years old. He played football in college, but he's 40 now. My God, he's the oldest person in the world. And so it just keeps going. I think that's great because you're right. It just marks a point in your life. And if you're still healthy, Alice Cooper, Aaron, I just saw Alice Cooper open that Def Leppard Motley Crue show. He's 75 years old. Now, Alice, the character, is ageless. So maybe there's something to that. Alice
Mm-hmm.
Cooper, the stage character, is not 75. He just exists. So maybe that helps in a way. But yeah, it's crazy. And I don't want it to ever end. That's my point. I don't ever want the ride to end. And
Yeah, I agree, but hey, we always got the music to reflect back to,
exactly,
so and it takes
exactly.
us right back to those times and those feelings, and that's the beautiful thing about music.
Aaron, I always appreciate it and I always look forward to it. And I always just light up when I see that you're have released something and that you're doing something, even aside from Y&T, which is already one of the great, most reliable, most respected rock acts still going. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Bahia Sunshine. The single is now streaming. The website's aaronleigh.com. You can get all the information, all the shows you got coming up, all the store, the new single. It's all there, nice and neat for you at aaronleigh.com. Also, Facebook. You're very active on there. So probably the best way to interact with you is through Facebook. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be the Facebook or the Instagram. I'm trying to drive some more traffic to my YouTube channel,
Yep.
where the Bahia Sunshine lyric video can be found, along with some other videos that I've, of some other singles that I've put out. I'm going to be just, trying to drive some more people over there. I'm going to be putting some more content on there as well, and be a little more engaged with the YouTube thing as well. So, yeah.
Tremendous. Well, Aaron, I always look forward to it. We got to do some stuff again, whether it just be us shooting the crap about bands, do an album battle. You pick one, I pick one. We'll do it. Something like that. I'm always up for it because you're absolutely one of our favorite guests here. So if you want some YouTube content, let's bang it out. Let's do a couple things like that and have some fun.
Absolutely, Clint. I would really enjoy that, man. A lot of fun.
Always, Aaron. Thank you so much. Continued success and have a great rest of the summer, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You bet.